Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the R&B Show. My name is Bruce Cologne. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. So for today's video, I wanted to continue covering the ongoing battle of words between Pink Floyd legends David Gilmour and Roger Waters, particularly a slight shift in tone that I've noticed from the Waters side and more of his recent social media posts. But before getting into that, I did want to thank everyone who took the time to watch the last video I did covering this topic, all the new subscribers, and also those of you who took the time to share comments, some of you quite lengthy ones, in which we saw kind of a range of responses to that topic. So they've been very interesting to read. And in particular, I did want to also address some of you who mentioned that perhaps I was a little harder on the Waters side of this argument rather than the Gilmour side. Looking back on that, I'll probably have to accept culpability for that. I think a lot of it stemmed from Roger's recent comments, which I felt kind of reverted back to some of the attacks he made in the 80s when Pink Floyd, first split with Roger Waters and some of that early nastiness. He did an interview with the Telegraph in the UK. So I'm going to read you the following quotes that I saw. So the first one, quote, "Gilmour and Rick, they can't write songs. They've nothing to say. They are not artists. They have no ideas, not a single one between them. They never have had, and that drives them crazy." End quote. And then later on in the same interview, he said the following: "I wrote The Dark Side of the Moon. Let's get rid of all this we crap. Of course, we were a band. There were 4 of us, and we all contributed. But it's my project, and I wrote it. So blah." End of quote. Now, personally, I thought a lot of that was unnecessary, especially with Richard Wright now gone. I don't think Roger still needs to be taking shots at Rick, especially when a lot of what he's saying I think is blatantly false. Rick Wright was an artist in his own right, as is David Gilmour. They didn't necessarily write the bulk of the lyrics of Pink Floyd's catalog. We all know that. But also, as we know, lyrics alone do not constitute songs. The best Pink Floyd albums came from the classic lineup working together as a real band. And some would say even before that, when Sid Barrett, the founder and original leader of the band, was the driving force initially. So there are a lot of people who think that once Roger took over, that was the end of Pink Floyd. So it's an interesting when you have a band that has this vast a history, the different pockets of fandom that you have within that. So, but again, between that quote and also his other negative comments about Gilmour and drummer Nick Mason's Ukraine single from last year, I felt the retribution from the Gilmour camp was not necessarily unwarranted, although I do want to make clear that Polly's actual statement and Gilmour's support of that were also very, very wrong. But for the record, I do want to make it clear, I am not anti-Roger Waters here. I've always been a longtime supporter of both Gilmour's work and Waters' work within the context of Pink Floyd, but also their solo catalog as well. I've seen Roger Waters live at least 5 times that I can remember. Once he started playing concerts again, I think it was around 99 with the In the Flesh tour, and then he started touring more consistently since then. So I've caught many shows since then. So again, there's no particular agenda against Roger Waters here. But anyway, to get to the real topic of today's video, what I find interesting is that in more recent media posts following the huge fallout from a few weeks ago, Roger has been very measured in his words. I think initially his first response to Samson was actually quite tactful, all things considered. And some recent statements also have been pretty, I think, diplomatic, at least as far as, Roger can be. For example, Roger recently issued a statement on Twitter to dispute what he called a, quote, ill-informed article by Stuart McConey in the New Statesman, in which Roger allegedly was quoted as saying that part of his agenda for creating this new version of Dark Side of the Moon will involve him getting rid of, quote unquote, Gilmour's horrible guitar solos. So Roger, to his credit, he made an official response on his social media, and I'll read you what it is that he posted. So, quote, I don't know who he thinks he's quoting when he says Gilmour's horrible guitar solos, but it sure as shit ain't me. I was there. I love Dave's guitar solos on Dark Side of the Moon, both of them, and on Wish You Were Here, and on Animals, and on The Wall, and on The Final Cut. In my, albeit biased view, David's solos on those albums constitute a collection of some of the very best guitar solos in the history of rock and roll. And then in a post just a few days ago previewing this new version of Dark Side of the Moon, Roger mentioned how, quote, it is not a replacement for the original, which obviously is irreplaceable. He also stated, it is a way for me to honor a recording that Nick and Rick and Dave and I have every right to be very proud of. So that's quite the turnaround, at least in tone, from a few weeks back, especially in light of how nasty things had gotten, particularly between him and Polly Sampson, Gilmour's wife and longtime creative collaborator. Now, whether it's legal and PR counsel or a genuine effort at diplomacy and restraint, I think that remains to be seen, but at least he hasn't been adding more coal to that particular fire. I also wanted to address many of you who mentioned that Roger has every right to re-record The Dark Side of the Moon, and that some of you are actually even looking forward to hearing this new version of it. Now, without a doubt, Roger has every right to do this, and there are many, many artists who've done similar projects in the recent past, whether it's re-recording old hits with an orchestra, or for example, Sting did this with his My Songs project, re-recording old songs, but with actual new arrangements altogether. In Roger's case, for me, it was really more, I think my question centered on the underlying motivation behind it, whether it was a genuine artistic reimagining or, just a way to kind of spotlight himself as the main architect for The Dark Side of the Moon, and also as a way to have a version where he controls the licensing of it as well. I guess we'll all know soon enough, but I really, really look forward to hearing from those of you who are going to take the time to give it a fair listen. But anyway, that's really all I have for today. If you enjoy the video, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing. All of that is essential for channel growth. And we'll definitely be covering this story as it continues to unfold, as well as other, classic rock reviews and content. But until then, everyone, please take care, stay safe, and we'll see all of you again very, very soon, okay? Peace.